Hey there, what's up you guys? In this video we're gonna be looking at some of the attractions of the Europa Park that never were built, even though some of which actually came quite close to being built, but for one reason or another the realization of their respective constructions was dismissed at some point in time, and what the park could have looked like if some of the ideas of the past had been implemented you can find out now, so stay tuned. And when browsing through some of the old maps of the park, you may come across some pictures of attractions that do not look so familiar, and maybe that's because they never actually were built. An example of such an attraction that never was built is the Jungle Cruise, which first showed up on a map in 1976, and it would remain on maps of the park until the late 70s. Obviously it was intended to be built right next to the log flume. The attraction bore a striking resemblance to another boat cruise that had already been built on the Great Lake, but also at that time a third boat cruise had already been planned, which also could be found on the map of the park. And that kind of makes you wonder, why the heck did they need so many boat cruises back then? Maybe that's why they eventually would give up on one of those rides. In the early 80s, a mysterious monorail showed up on the map of the park, which was intended to connect the Austrian-themed area with the Italian part of the park. And this monorail would remain on the maps of the park for actually quite some time, until the late 80s, but as you can probably imagine, this ride was never built also. Eventually in 1990 the park would build a second monorail, but this one did not have much in common with the one you saw on the maps of the 80s, as this new one had a track that formed a full circle. Also, this new monorail only had one station, so it could only be used as an observation ride, and therefore it did not connect any two themed areas of the park. And even one of the major rides of the Europa Park could have looked quite differently today if they had adhered to the initial plans. And the attraction I'm talking about is the Euro-Mir, and what it could have looked like is this. And yes, these were the initial designs of the Euro-Mir, I'm not kidding. Some of you may know Ulrich Damrau, or probably not, I guess. He was the person who designed pretty much all of the themed areas of the Europa Park in the 80s and 90s. He also designed most of the attractions back then. And if the owners of the park had adhered to his plans, this is what Euro-Mir would look like today, but apparently it would have been too costly to implement those ideas, and that's why Euro-Mir now looks quite different. And the final attraction on our list of things that never were built is a dueling wooden coaster that was initially intended to be built right next to the Russian village. And as the story goes, the owners needed this attraction to be completed by the end of 2012, but if they had built the wooden coaster, the dueling coaster, this would not have been possible. So that's why they eventually gave up on this idea of building a dueling coaster, and they then decided to build a rather common wooden coaster, which is now known as the Wodan, and it can be found in Iceland. So that's it with today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it, so stay healthy.